What's going on, everyone? So, the Orlando Magic obviously are making moves. They went and did the Desmond Bane trade, likely going to make some other moves this upcoming offseason because they are in a wide open Eastern Conference, right? Boston is going to be in probably a little bit of a hiatus. And then from there, it's just like the Cavs, right? You have obviously the Indiana Pacers, the New York Knicks. Can Orlando be right in the mix of that? They're probably going to make some other moves. But one of the moves that they just recently made was they declined the option on Gary Harris. Now, this made a lot of sense for them. They don't really have a need for Gary Harris. They have like an abundance of guys that can play and fill that role, right? Gary Harris is still a very good player. He's a guy that I absolutely think makes a ton of sense for the Lakers. We're going to touch on that here in a moment. But for a team like Orlando, he doesn't make as much sense because that's like all they have are guys that like play his position, right? The 2 through 3 range, right? So they're good in that regard. They have their guard rotation basically locked up. I mean, why they traded Cole Anthony. I mean, even Cole Anthony fell out of, the rotation in a lot of ways because they just have those guys already locked up. So it made sense that they would go and waive, or not waive, but, decline the option on Gary Harris. But as far as Gary Harris on the Lakers, he's a guy that if I'm the Lakers, I am going after immediately. I've talked about like DeAnthony Melton. Gary Harris is another guy. I mean, if you could get Melton and Harris this offseason, that would be great, in my opinion, right? Go get Harris, go get DeAnthony Melton, and then like a Clint Capella. I think that'd be a hugely successful offseason, right? Obviously, I want to see them do some trades and make some moves and stuff like that, but I'm talking about just as like free agency signings. That'd be great. You get 2 versatile 3-and-D, guards, right, that can play the 2, play the 3, and then also get that just quality backup center who give you a double-double and is still one of the best offensive rebounders of basketball. To me, that would be just fantastic. And I'll get into all my ideal, scenarios and trades and all that stuff as we move closer to the offseason. We're still a bit of ways. I want to get through the draft and kind of see what happens if the Lakers end up making any moves around the draft or anything like that. Because you're going to have a lot of teams, a lot of traction. Shams himself has even talked about how like, hey, there might be a lot going on around this draft. So I want to kind of wait before we actually get, to the actual offseason, but stay tuned for that. But Gary Harris, right? He's a guy, 30 years old. He'll be 31 going into next season. So he's still young, right? He's still a guy that, as a veteran, that has been there, done that, has experience, that can slot in and play a role, has playoff experience, all of that. Right? He's a guy that last year, again, he basically was out of the rotation for the most part. He was very limited in like field goal attempts. He played like the fewest minutes, fewest field goal attempts. So it's kind of hard to judge Gary Harris based on last season because, again, he was just kind of the odd man out. You look at last year, he played 48 games, started in 3 games, which was the fewest starts of his career, right? 48 games was tied for the second fewest games that he played for his career. 15 minutes per game, 14.8 to be exact, which is the fewest minutes since his rookie season, which he averaged 13 minutes per game. Field goal percentage from 3-point range dropped to 38 field goal percentage period dropped to 38.3%, but on 2.8 attempts, which is the lowest attempts of his career. 3-point percentage dropped to 36%, which again is the second or third lowest of his career since basically, his early years. He is a career 37% 3-point shooter on 4 attempts. He only took 2.1 attempts. So basically almost all of his attempts were just primarily as a 3 guy. 2-point range on 0.7 attempts, which again was the lowest of his career, 46.9%. EFG of 51.9%. Free throw percentage on 0.3 attempts was again the lowest of his career at 58%. He is a career 81% free throw shooter. Rebounding averaged 1.3 rebounds. We'll round up and say an assist, half a steal, half a block, and 3 points per game. If you look at his per 36, that for last year, again, doesn't tell you the whole story, but kind of gives you an idea, okay, if he was getting like starter level minutes, he would have been a 7, 3, 2, 1.5, and 1 guy, right? 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks. Right? So he's still got the 3-and-D aspect and element of it. But if you look at like when he was actually getting minutes in production, even the previous year where he was getting 24 minutes per game, 5.5 attempts, so nearly double the attempts, right? He was shooting 37% from 3-point range. He was shooting 60% from 2-point range, right? Free throw shooting, 76%, grabbing, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, half a block, and 7 points per game, right? And that was in a backup role, right? He played 54 games, only started in 27. So he's playing a backup role in which he was basically, like I said, a 7-point-a-game guy off the bench, giving you a steal, block. You look at kind of like the more like starter level years, and even like some of the Orlando years where he wasn't starting, but he was getting like real like starter level minutes. I'm talking about a guy that was, basically anywhere from, 12 points to as high as 17 and a half. I mean, he had a season where he was basically nearly an 18-3-3 with 2 steals and half a block, right? So he's a guy that can give you production, right? He's a guy that you're signing to a vet minimum anyway, right? Like, I don't see him getting more than a vet minimum. Maybe a team that's kind of desperate maybe would give him that. But I think realistically, you're probably signing him for a vet minimum. He's a guy that the Lakers have had interest in for years. There was even talks about the Lakers potentially going and trading for him as recent as this last trade deadline. Now, we've talked about him over the years in like various trades and just like packages and stuff. Like, can you get a Gary Harris also? Because again, he is just that ideal 3-and-D, slot in, give you that athleticism, give you that defense, give you that shooting. He's the kind of guy you want alongside Luka, Reeves, and LeBron, right? Like, he's the guy that you could slot in, play in, right? Kind of push the pace, push the tempo, guy that can play some defense, get after it, does the dirty work, makes the hustle plays, right? Talking about a guy that's 6'4", 6'5" in height, So, again, he's like size-wise, you want him at the 2, right? I'd love to see him kind of backing up Austin Reeves at the 2, right? Like, in a perfect world, you go and you get like an Andrew Wiggins and Nick Claxton. Just use those guys as an example, right? So your starters are basically, Luka, Reeves, Wiggins, LeBron, and a Nick Claxton, right? And then like your guys off the bench in the backup are like DeAnthony Melton, Gary Harris at the 2, and then you have a Dorian Finney-Smith that can slot in at the 3 or the 4, right? And that's kind of like your 8. Maybe you get, like I said, a Clint Capella. There's your 9-man rotation. And you got just these quality vets, these quality two-way guys, these quality experience that you can slot in that are not going to mess up. You're in a hard-fought playoff series. They're guys that are going to do and be the difference makers, right? Even when it doesn't show up on the box score, Gary Harris is a guy that go get that steal, that can go get, create that stop, right? That can be that swing man for you and stuff, right? Gary Harris is a guy that I would love to have. Also, would be just one of those like low risk, high reward type guys, right? Like, you're getting him for a vet minimum. You need to fill out your roster anyway, right? If he's given the type of role that he'd be given on the Lakers, because the Lakers need a guy like him, I think he could get back to being a double-digit guy off the bench, like genuinely, right? Because you got to think the quality of looks this guy would get. He hasn't gotten since playing with Jokic, and Jokic wasn't the Jokic then that he is now even, right? So like a guy like a Gary Harris, the type of looks that he's going to get for a guy that, is a very good 3-point shooter, right? Has had 40+% years. I wouldn't be shocked if he's back to being 40+% from 3-point range, because he has LeBron and Luka and Austin Reeves just getting him wide open looks. Dorian Finney-Smith even talked about this last year, where he was like, dude, we had to like have a meeting about it because like we're just wide open, right? Like, so we're like trying to rush the shot thinking that like the defender's about to close in, and then realizing like, watching tape and stuff like that, like, no, we could, fix a sandwich and, get a haircut and, maybe make some transactions, buy some stuff online and then go and shoot the 3 ball, right? Like they're just in a position to where it's just, they're wide open. So get a guy like Gary Harris, who is a vet that's not afraid of the moment, that can knock down the 3 ball, but also be another defensive piece out there that can switch and defend, basically 1 through 3 for you. I think that just is, again, everything the Lakers need. The Lakers desperately need guys like a Gary Harris. And I look at that as like, hey, man, you can get that vet minimum signing that can come in. I'm sure he would love to be a Laker, right? Like, so, and not just that. I mean, if you're a guy like Gary Harris, right, even if you think you're worth more than a vet minimum, right, wouldn't you want, like, to play alongside Luka and LeBron to kind of raise your value and show. Like if you're like, even if you're looking for like one last contract, I'm gonna be 31 next year. Like I want one more contract till I'm like 35 or whatever and get, 10 million a year at least, whatever, 8 million a year, right? Well, great way to do that is to spend a year with Luka and LeBron, shoot over 40% from 3-point range, and teams go, yeah, like, hey, he's still, he still got it. And, a team wants you as like a vet or something, or you're sticking around with the Lakers, right? If it's that good. So I do think, again, it's a very low risk, high reward type of acquisition. That, you're just not, this free agency class isn't this like, stellar free agency class where it's like, man, you're going to get all these like great players and great, like, no, it's very limited on what you could potentially get, the type of players that can kind of fill the void. You can get a guy like a Gary Harris, right? Like if you can get Gary Harris and then, like I said, a DeAnthony Melton, or if you can get a Bruce Brown, that would be fantastic. Right now, you kind of solve most of your needs, right? Particularly out on the perimeter as far as like vets and, perimeter depth, 3-and-D shooting, stuff like that. These are the kind of guys that the Lakers need. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So enjoy these types of videos. Truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one.